Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello, and here we go again.
Here goes the sun again.
Boom, boom, out go the lights.
Yes, perhaps.
Well, I don't want anyone hurt, though.
No, of course not. No. But we do have two explosions on the sun. On January 2nd, two dark filaments of magnetism erupted in the sun's southern hemisphere. And there is a video here to show from NASA. Never a straight answer. We thank them for at least giving us some things to look at and some information. Captures them both, and look for the shadowy filaments lifting off at 0.6 seconds and 11 seconds. And this double eruption hurled a closely spaced pair of CMEs towards Earth. The first CME was slow-moving, the second faster. This could cause the two CMEs to pile one on top of the other, intensifying their impact. Wow. Isn't that interesting? It is, isn't it? You know, and guess when they're coming? They're coming on the 6th, guys. They're coming on the 6th.
Almost as if it might have been planned or invoked or something like that.
And you know what we've gotten from the guides too is, well, you know, there really could be outages.
Yeah.
And we were getting this last night too, that there really is a big increase in the chances of communications going down. And here we go. Now we have, we have one reason, and there might be more than one reason for this, but, you know, this, interestingly enough, will give an opportunity to cast blame. Now, they're expecting a minor G1 storm. Now, in normal times, that shouldn't be any big deal. However, you know, it always does cause an interaction with the Earth's core, which then again gives us an increased chance of earthquakes and volcanic activity, which we can see, feel, and sense is increasing anyway. So with this incoming and everything ongoing, especially over in Washington, D.C., that's going to be going down on the 6th. Wow, we have an interesting couple of days ahead.
I know. I like the way you say incoming and ongoing, and all of these things are, you know, they're going to shape and twist our new way of living, our new reality. It's going to be a little bit of a bumpy ride, but I feel we're going to be okay. It's just things are going to change.
And I'm sitting here covered in flour because, you know, we don't have an oven.
Right.
So what we're going to do is do it the old-fashioned way. I bought a Dutch oven, and I got bread rising, you know, all done by hand, and we'll be cooking it over a flame. And I've never done that before, but we're going to see how it comes out because, you know, we've been prepping for this for years. I've been prepping for this mentally for, you know, decades as well. And it's time. And we've been toughening ourselves. You know, we haven't been putting heat on. We've been getting used to, you know, the interior being in the 50s and even meditating outside in the 20s or, you know, somewhere in that range. Even in the mornings, it's like in the teens. Just getting tougher because it's going to pay off.
Well, it's definitely going to pay off, and I call it spiritual grit.
Exactly. We need some spiritual grit in these times. And so dark filaments are twisted tubes of magnetism containing solar plasma. They look dark only because the plasma inside is a bit cooler than the underlying sun. In fact, they are quite hot and bright, and they would outshine the full moon if you could hold them up in the night sky.
I'm looking at that. Doesn't it look strangely like a DNA twists sort of thing?
It does. It does look like the double helix of DNA. Yeah. And DNA extends beyond the double helix, and DNA actually extends on out into our etheric bodies. Every incarnation we take affects us as well, and there's consequences.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's why it's so important to heal, because ultimately, you know, when we heal ourselves, it heals backwards and it heals forwards.
So, interesting terminology here. Often snaking, serpents, snaking, kundalini. Hundreds of thousands of kilometers through the sun's atmosphere, these sinuous filaments can become unstable and erupt, hurling their contents into space. And that is exactly what happened on the 2nd. Excuse me there, guys. Think about this timing. When I saw this, I was like, but of course. But of course we're going to be expecting a double CME impact on January 2nd.
Right.
It's just so fitting.
Well, and they do put these headlines up. They're so funny because they put up something about a meteor passing by around November 3rd, too. So it's curious how they throw these headlines up.
And we've explored at this channel in depth. And, I've had discussions with David Devine, Adapt 2030. Both we've done interviews together talking about advanced alien technology. What would that look like? What would be possible? As well as, of course, all the regular cycles, the grand solar minimum, the pole shift, the ice ages. And, some of it we've done off mic. And, there's a lot of people with great minds out there, I'll just put it that way, that recognize the possibility that we're dealing with beings that have technology that inducing CMEs would be nothing to them.
Right. It would be just, that's what they do. They know how to do it. And, my hope is that it really benefits mankind, whatever is coming in.
The Kardashev scale of galactic civilizations, the Russian scientists came out with it. And at a certain level, which, by the way, we're infantile, on the Kardashev scale, basically. We're just starting to get to be maybe a toddler, ready to stand on our own 2 feet. Not quite yet, though. We're still bumping back down. At some point, they would be able to, the beings would be able to harness all the energy of their planet and then harness all the energy and control of their sun, and then actually be able to move planets and even suns and solar systems into different places. And then we see and hear all the legends of Saturn, for instance, at one time being a sun. And I got to go more in depth on Saturn. There's a whole bunch of stuff we got to go more in depth in. So much stuff to discuss, but the rings around Saturn, that's a topic in and of itself that's fascinating. So if Saturn was a sun at one point in time, and if Venus and Earth were actually part of Saturn's system and were moved into place, perhaps not through cataclysm, as some have suspected, like Velikovsky, and maybe there was cataclysm involved as well, but perhaps just simply rearranging things in order to keep human frequency low, human vibe low, and keep us in a matrix, a locked up matrix of sorts. This is child's play to beings that have that type of technology.
Yep. And, they know how to do things, and they know how to keep us asleep, and they know how to wake us up. And, I think it's really important that people realize on some level you're controlled by a higher force, definitely.
So we have a bright daylight fireball recorded over Bahia, Brazil. And this was also on the 2nd. And there's video there. We've seen so many of these as we look at some of these other ones. Fireball as bright as the full moon spotted over southern Spain. And by the way, we also have another asteroid 2021 AH just flew past the Earth. Look at that, 0.13 a lunar distance. Now that's something to take note of. That's close. Again, lunar distance, big difference from the distance from the sun. The lunar distance is 239,000 miles roughly, and the sun is tens of millions of miles. And so, when we see tabloids talking about killer asteroid coming, most of the time those tabloids are talking BS. But when you start getting down that close, then, that's something to keep an eye on. Of course, it's the size that matters. Sorry. And she's giggling. 18 to 40 feet. Okay, so that most likely would burn up and give us one of these spectacular fireballs. So again, that's not a city killer or anything like that. And the question here, out of strange sounds, did a huge meteor fireball crash into Allegan Lake in Michigan? Because there was a lot of reports of that, nothing official. Sonic booms, but we got strange booms going on all over the place as well. We've talked about that at length.
Well, yeah, it makes you wonder really what's going on. And I honestly feel that mostly it is the Earth making her changes and releasing certain energies that it's just time for them to go.
Now, the Earth, if left to, if there was no enhancements, what we have gotten is that we really probably have, 10 to 20 years before the major event happens. And we're talking pole shift, crustal displacement. If we're talking about technology that could get the sun to activate, to even move solar systems, then of course things can be sped up. And of course there's certain agendas and certain numbers associated with different agendas that we've talked about as well. And perhaps if things don't manifest the way that certain powers that be desire, then certain things might be accentuated and sped up. That is always another possibility as well. So, by the way, we have the quadrantid meteor shower tonight as well. This is something that we'll be able to see in North America. You should be able to see the tail end of the show tonight. The annual meteor shower typically peaks between January 3rd and 4th, and this year has thus far provided less than ideal views for sky watchers, given that the moon was 81% full overnight on the 3rd, and they're fairly faint meteors, so moonlight can easily wash them out. These are not biggies, so some of the stuff that we're seeing that's spectacular, people might want to associate with this, but it is not likely that you're getting daylight ones when you can't really typically see these if they're washed out by a full moon. Yes. So what we're seeing going on, there's something different there. There's something different in play.
Very curious.
And we've been watching Pele, watching Etna, watching Vesuvius, and here we go, aviation color code raised to red in Italy over Etna. So, and when we're talking about like those big earth-shaking events that we're talking about being like still like a decade or more out, that doesn't include things that are huge necessarily. Like we still could have Cascadia go. We still could have the big one, down in Southern California, by the way. And we still could have events happening in Japan as well. And many other places, that are at risk. In New Madrid, for instance, I do feel instinctively, just by looking at X marks the spot, that they're telling us that the New Madrid will be put into play. And I'm wording it that way on purpose. The New Madrid will be put into play by probably the second eclipse in April 2024. So I do think that all those things can happen. But we're talking about the bigger things like, the solar flash that Diehold Foundation talks about, as well as others have talked about, and the actual magnetic poles shifting, and perhaps a crustal displacement event. Things that are mentioned in the Adam and Eve story as well that we've seen declassified. There's a lot of interesting stuff that's been declassified. So what we've gotten from the guides is that type of thing, where people are seriously scrambling on a global level, is still a ways off, unless induced. Right. But there still can be an awful lot of stuff that's going to go down in between that time. But again, the thing that we're facing right now, right in our faces, that is the most concerning to many is the geopolitical financial system redo, collapse, etc., etc., etc.
Well, that's just one huge mess, and they're keeping everything chaotic all around us, so we don't really know exactly what to do, because if we knew exactly what to do, they wouldn't have so much control over us. So it behooves them to keep us in a state of panic, a state of wondering what's going on all the time.
And of course, the different waves that are causing the lockdown situation. And again, the different waves, successive. It's like we're watching the ocean, and here comes one. Oh, well, this wave's a little bit bigger than that wave. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, this wave is a little bit different than that wave. And, that's what we're seeing. These waves can change, just like when you watch the surf. The surf changes. And you might think it's a pretty tranquil day. And so often, people are caught up in that. There's something called rogue waves that we see, especially in the Pacific Northwest there. that can actually, just sweep people out to sea because they're not expecting it. They're thinking, well, it's a relatively tranquil day. Surf's not really too rough. This is nothing we can't handle. And then all of a sudden, while they're looking towards shore, waving at their kids, whoosh, it comes right over their head and they're swept away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, things can be unexpected, especially when they're giving us certain information you really can't count on. That's why it's so important to be in touch with your heart.
And we have a massive landslide. This is in New Zealand. We've been seeing a lot more landslides lately. We saw the one up in Sweden. We've seen them in Alaska, and here we have also down in New Zealand. Beautiful area, and I keep thinking, whenever I hear New Zealand, I think 90% owned by the crown. 90% owned by the crown. Same thing with Canada. Same thing with Australia. And I think, how could that be in this day and age? How could that be? Sorry, it's just one of those things that's a little bit of a pet peeve.
It is horrible.
So the landslide landslide blog, I should say, stated that it appeared to be a rock slope failure on a steep ridge. And we've seen some spectacular ones. Thankfully, there's not a whole bunch of houses under there. And was the case in some other spots, as we had seen. And we have flash floods that affect more than 15,000 families in central Philippines. This has not stopped. The Philippines, Vietnam, they have been hammered with all year long. There's just been nonstop flooding.
I know, it's been so sad. I've been sending them a lot of energy to help give them strength to get through this. This is horrible.
400 homes damaged or destroyed, and that's just in this round, because this has just been constant. They had set records over there for storms this year, as we had in the U.S., and here we see families rescued in England after sudden snow hits. And be prepared, there's going to be dramatic changes. We're seeing these dramatic shifts, and here we go, and it's talking about what they have told us officially in the past. It would be laughable if it weren't so criminal and dangerous. Barely 3 weeks after the UK Met Office prophesies Britain will no longer see snowfall by 2040 to 2060, families are being rescued from deep drifts in the English Peak District as the country braces for its biggest snowstorms in a decade plus. This reminds me of the political situation.
Yeah.
When you look at the situation, what we have, and they're talking about weather-wise, doesn't it feel like it's the same divide that exists between the left and the right exists in, the grand solar minimum people and the, global warming people.
Right.
It's the exact same divide. It's so extreme, it'll give you whiplash.
I know. We should probably just go into a little more depth with that, because it is a curious thing how they keep us apart and keep us separated. And I think it's important to really put that in the spotlight to be recognized how they work.
Yeah, this is just part of everything on this planet. And as you see here, of electroverse, global temp plunges 0.26 degrees Celsius in a month. The next ice age has just started. And I think a lot of people are feeling that. I mean, I instinctively felt it from childhood. I always felt that as life would progress, things were going to get colder at some point, consistently colder. And, I've had visions of finishing my life somewhere in Latin America, which, I think is about a decade away. I think for whatever reason, we're supposed to spend the next 10 years here in the U.S. still. Although, anybody buys me a plane ticket one way, I'll go, as long as it's 2 tickets. And, maybe 4. We'll have Zeke and Sassy. We can't leave them. I would definitely love to go to Latin America. But we have work to do here and work helping people through this transitional period. Because really, we got 5 to 10 years. That's going to be a roller coaster ride before we start to really see things improve consistently.
We really do. We have work to do.
Yeah, there is work ahead. And we want to thank you guys for being part of the family. Please make sure you are subscribed and click the bell for notifications. And thanks for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. Thanks also for your patience with us getting back with the emails. It's been just such a busy time period, as like today we're seeing 6-7 people, which is kind of typical, as anybody that needs help energetically or with spiritual coaching, any sort of way, feel free to reach out to us, and we work on a donation basis, so we leave it up to you. And we just trust. We trust that we will rise above. We trust that, the light will rise above the darkness. And we'll have that new era, that new time period, and as we shed the darkness that has been over this globe.
God bless and namaste.
God bless and namaste.